Hello! I am PG, and today I'll be giving you my top 10 rap albums of the year. Along the way, right before I get to my top 5, I will be giving you some honorable mentions as well. So stick around for that, and I hope you enjoy this video. So getting right into it, I have at number 10, Drake and 21 Savage with Her Loss. I'm a bit surprised myself that I put this in my top 10, but it cracks the list. And one of the factors and attributes I look for when I'm judging all these albums was it fun to listen to? Was it enjoyable? Does it have replay value, etc.? And this definitely meets all that criteria. Drake and 21 have proven to collab well together, and it's no different on this album. The production is pretty good throughout, you even have multiple beat switches. There are bangers on here like Rich Flex, Major Distribution, Broke Boys, Pussy and Millions, and more. You even have a song like Middle of the Ocean where vintage Drake shows up, as he raps and spits poetically for about 4 minutes over the smooth, jazzy kind of soul beat. There's a nice beat transition in there as well. Even though 21 comes across as more of a sidekick and a feature artist throughout this album, he does bring out the best in Drake, and perhaps the best Drake rapping performances we've heard throughout an album since Views, and possibly even, if you're reading this, it's not too late. Like I said, it was fun to listen to, hearing them go kind of back and forth, and it makes you want to smile, laugh now, and cry later. Oh, this fucking guy. Does it have the best content and substance? No. Is it a bit toxic? Yes. But it's definitely an enjoyable listen and worthy of my top 10 list. Next at number 9, Benny the Butcher with Tana Talk 4. This is a sequel obviously to Tana Talk 3, and it feels like a sequel to a movie but loaded with more stars. Obviously you have his Griselda members playing their part and doing all their verses well, especially Stove God Cooks and Conway the Machine. You also have features from J. Cole, who had a standout verse and probably the best feature verse of the year on Johnny P's Caddy. You also have Diddy talking his talk on 10 More Commandments. And yeah, Benny does do his usual thing that his fans love, and that's rapping about selling drugs, moving weight, boasting like that. But then you also have moments where he's reflective and regretful about his past and those actions, and also reflecting on his success and not taking it for granted, like on songs Super Plug and Bust a Brick Nick. And I am a big Griselda fan, and it's good to see that year after year over the past maybe 4 or 5 years, they keep putting out great projects. At number 8 is Black Thought and Danger Mouse with their collab album Cheat Codes. It's been a long time since Danger Mouse produced alongside a rapper. This definitely feels like one of the most uniquely and interesting produced albums of the year. There's elements of classical music, jazz, and psychedelic rock. And per usual, you'll catch Black Thought rapping his ass off, boasting about his lyrical greatness, also talking about struggles between society, science, and religion. There's a ton of features on here as well, ranging from Run the Jewels, Russ, Joey Badass, and a posthumous verse from MF Doom on the song Belize. I don't know if this is the right word, but I find a few of the beats a bit clunky, but there are beautiful moments on here as well, like hearing the strings on a song like Aquamarine, or the psychedelic guitar riffs across songs like Salt Water and the opening track Sometimes. And there isn't any bad features on here either. Some would say these two guys are underground maestros and masters of their craft, and I would say this collaboration definitely proves that. It took me a bit of time for the music here to grow on me, but I assure you it's a great album and I recommend it. Coming in at number 7 is Joey Badass 2000. This album acts as a form of sequel to his first album 1999. Not to compare the two albums because now 1999 is widely considered to be a classic, but this album definitely carries similar themes. There's a very early 2000s rap aesthetic and vibe to it, whether that be the production mostly done by Static Selecta, who dominated the early 2000s and worked with a lot of rappers, or whether that be the delivery of Joey Badass. He's definitely evolved as a rapper, an artist, and a writer, whether that's him talking about his struggles, his boasting, or even talking about his late friend Capital Steez, which he does beautifully on the song Survivor's Guilt, which I think should be considered for one of the best rap songs of the year. I found the track listing to be cohesive, and I found a good amount of replay value on here, like Make Me Feel, Show Me, One of Us, Zip Codes, Brand New 911. I wanted to put this album higher on my list, but I do feel that Joey really does play it safe here and doesn't really evolve with the sound, but he definitely sticks to his guns, and he does it pretty well. And at number 6, I have Denzel Curry with Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. From the get-go, the rollout of this album featured that music video for Walkin', which was very theatrical, and it's definitely a theatrical elements to this album. There's this theme of trying to move forward despite what's swirling around you in society and in the world. In the past, Denzel has been using these kind of alter egos, where here he's more stripped back and kind of peels behind the curtain and gets very self-reflective. But despite that, he still shows his very aggressive rapping style, and there's still some bangers and ragers on here as well, like songs John Wayne, Troubles, Sanjuro, X-Wing. And then you also have those beautiful moments of self-reflection like on the song Mental. Not to mention the intro track Melt Session number 1 is one of the better intro tracks of the year. Denzel has always felt like this internet favorite or internet darling throughout the underground rap scene, and I'm sure those same people would put this album in maybe the top 3, but to me it's not as enjoyable as albums I put above this, but it's definitely an album that's going to make me check out his catalog and replay his stuff even more. Before I wrap up my top 5, I gotta shout out some honorable mentions. Now, I'm not really supportive of the whole, well, everybody gets a participation award, ribbon, trophy, whatever, or in this case, albums. But I think every hip-hop fan will agree with me that this year had so many quality albums, it was hard to condense it into a top 10 list. So I was gonna have 5 prepared, but honestly, I came up with 7. So here they are listed in alphabetical order. Boldy James and Nicholas Craven, Fair Exchange No Robbery, Conway the Machine's God Don't Make Mistakes, Logic's Vinyl Days, Lupe Fiasco's Drill Music in Zion, Metro Boomin's Heroes and Villains, Rock Marciano and the Alchemist collab The Elephant Man's Bones, and lastly, Saba's Few Good Things. At number 5, I have Kendrick Lamar's Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. After 5 years, Kendrick drops another great album, and from the very beginning he says, I've been going through some things. That's exactly what takes part throughout the album. It feels like an ongoing therapy session where he reveals a lot about personal issues, daddy issues, relationships, family drama, and more. I don't think this is his best produced album, but there's still some quality tracks and hits on this thing, like N95, Rich Spirit, Count Me Out, Mr. Morale, and Die Hard. I also feel that Father Time featuring Sampha is one of the best songs of the year. Kendrick definitely doesn't lose a step in terms of lyrical ability and delivering his flows and emotions, but with all the substance around it, I do feel that this is a more difficult listen as opposed to other albums. This is definitely the most vulnerable a rapper has sounded maybe ever. I have no doubt that this album will win multiple Grammys, but to me the main reason why this album isn't higher on my list is because it's not as enjoyable, or I don't see the replay value in it as much as the albums I put ahead of it. Moving on to number 4 is Freddie Gibbs' Soul Sold Separately. Gangsta Gibbs' best work has always been alongside one producer throughout the entirety of an album, whether that's Madlib for Pinata and Bandana, or 2 years ago with The Alchemist on Alfredo, and here he's working with a slew of producers, including a beat from The Alchemist and Madlib, and it actually works together quite nicely. It does sound cohesive, and there's even a concept behind the album as he's on the top floor of this casino, kind of soaking in his success, but also reflecting on moments of regret and the darkness of his past. You even hear a conceptual piece on the outro of the tracks with this concierge service at the hotel and casino, and he's getting voicemails from celebrities and friends, even the likes of comedians Jeff Ross and Joe Rogan. But on to the music itself. Freddie Gibbs, as always, is rapping his ass off as he usually flows effortlessly, whether that be a jazzy beat, a soul beat, like on songs Lobster Omelet, or even on a banger like Too Much. There's also tracks where he gets reflective, like Grandma's Stove and Dark Hearted, and you still have his moments where he has that boastful drug talk with Pusha T on the song Gold Rings. And there's bangers on here as well, like I said, Too Much, and the song Zipper Bags. And the beginning of this album is great too. Couldn't Be Done with Kelly Price, and Blackest in the Room produced by The Alchemist. Although it is an assortment of different producers, it still feels very much well put together and still has that mafioso gangsta vibe that Freddie Gibbs always provides. I just really enjoyed this album. At number 3 is Jid with The Forever Story. He dropped DiCaprio 2 in 2018, so this album was highly anticipated, and boy did he deliver. I feel that Jid has this Andre 3000-ish quality to him, not just because he's a good rapper from Atlanta, but because he's able to flow on anything and sound so smooth at the same time. There's a lot of storytelling on this album, like on songs Crack Sandwich, Bredanem, and Systanem. A lot of talks about growing up in the hood and being surrounded by family, and a lot of issues and struggling coming up. He also tries to bridge the gap between growing up in Atlanta and where he stands in hip-hop today. Not only does he have stellar rapping performances, but he also has stellar melodic performances, like on the song Cody Blue 31. And even with some storytelling and content like that, it's not without its bangers, like songs Dance Now and Surround Sound with 21 Savage. Not to mention there's quality features on here as well, like Lil Wayne on the song Just in Time, and Yasin Bey on the song Stars. There is something for everyone's ears on this album, and Jid does deliver an ambitious album, but I think he pulls it off pretty well. And I also feel that this album helps him cement himself as one of the best young rappers, not just in Atlanta, but in the game today. At number 2, it's Pusha T's It's Almost Dry. You can't go wrong with an album that's half produced by the great Pharrell Williams and the great and potential Nazi Kanye West. In fact, the first 6 songs, the first half of this project, all great songs. You have Brambleton, Let the Smoker Shine the Coops, Dreaming of the Past, each of which have great sample work on it. Neck and Wrist with Jay-Z, Just So You Remember, and Diet Coke. Yeah, the majority of what Pusha T raps about is cocaine and dealing with moving weight and stuff. So what? It freaking works. Like he says, it's like Martin Scorsese and his directing of mob movies. It's just part of their DNA. His brother Malice also shows up for Eclipse Reunion on the outro track Pray For You with a great guest verse. You also get that Pusha T aesthetic in the past with this like grimy, eerie beats, like on Just So You Remember, Open Air, and Call My Bluff. Now there are flaws on this album. I mean, with the production from Kanye and Pharrell, there is some overlap stylistically. The song Scrape It Off with Lil Uzi Vert and Don Toliver, it's a good song, but the sound just doesn't fit the aesthetic of the album. And the same goes with Rock and Roll featuring Kanye and Kid Cudi. But still, barely no skips on this thing. This album was heavy in my rotation when it came out. I just kept blasting those smackers. Let the Smoker Shine the Coops, Dreaming of the Past, Hear Me Clearly, just bangers. Just bangers and raw energy throughout. I'm also super disappointed that I missed his concert when he came around my neck of the woods. Also, all things considered, people say that his best album was his last one, Daytona. It was a concise 7-track album, but honestly, if you take the best 7 tracks from this album and put them in a nice track listing and you compare it, it really is debatable. And finally, my number 1 rap album of the year goes to Nav with, I read that wrong. It's Nas with King's Disease 3. A very relevant legend and one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest rapper of all time. Alongside Hit Boy, puts out the 3rd and final installment of the King's Disease series. And I also feel that this is the best produced album in the series, even including their Project Magic. It feels like Nas and Hit Boy built off of the momentum of the Project Magic and came up with this thing. Nas, as always, delivers on point with bars, great storytelling. He kicks you off with a great intro song, Ghetto Reporter, and Legit. And then you got bangers like Thun and Michael and Quincy. I have Thun heavy in my rotation right now. And as always, Nas stresses the importance about the struggle growing up in Queensbridge and also reflecting on that, his maturity, and the maturity that rappers should have as he looks amongst his peers. He shines a light on what rappers should be doing instead of the whole beefing and nonsense that they're doing now. In fact, on the song Beef, which is very well written, it likens to that song he had on the album It Was Written called I Gave You Power. In that song, he personified a gun, and in this song, he writes and personifies what beef is. He also gets very nostalgic on songs Reminisce and Once a Man, Twice a Child. Simply said, there's great messaging in this album about maturing and evolving, even from growing up in certain environments. And it's important to note that Nas, at 49 years old, is rapping on this album by himself. It really shows a masterclass of what a great rapper can be like, even well into his 40s. It's almost like a third leg into his career. And even at this point, I feel that he delivered one of his best albums, and certainly his best album since probably the early or even mid-2000s. So shout out to a GOAT, Nas. And there you have it, folks. That is my top 10 rap albums of 2022. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please smash the like button, destroy the subscribe button, and absolutely obliterate that bell to get notifications of when I upload new content. Thank you in advance. These are my thoughts, my rankings. Stay blessed.